Etapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Kasankma Keparu with another video for you. In this video, I want to talk to you about how the Matrix's user interface work. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. Also, we have some free ebooks for you that expand on my spiritual teachings and talk more about the esoteric. Click the links below and you can download those ebooks right away. Start reading them. They are free. And if you haven't already, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. I just uploaded a new video there, which is on super confidence. It's a hypnosis video that you can watch in the comfort of your own home, and it will take you into the hypnotic state to embed commands to make you more confident in any situation at work, public speaking, or social events. So it's a really, really great video called Super Confidence, and it's available for Patreon supporters, and you can do so, become a supporter for as little as $1 or $20 per month. You can cancel at any time. So, and lastly but not least, can you please share this video with family and friends so we can get this message out there and free the planet? So namaste. How are my magi's out there? How are you, all you magi's and genies? Let's talk about the Matrix's user interface. That's a tongue twister. Matrix's user interface. You know, I met with a friend today, and we met to have lunch. I actually got up this morning. I had a meeting with a producer, and I pitched a project to the producer. He was late to the meeting. He loved the project, and we'll see what happens. And then after that, I met with a friend of mine at this mall to have lunch. And as we ate, and then we were walking through the mall, just killing some time. And he started asking me or inquiring about, like, what do I do? If I could tell more about this whole thing about hypnosis and how does it work, and basically about my whole ideology. He doesn't really understand it in terms of a spirituality or religion. So I said, well, yeah, I said, I really practice manipulating reality, creating my own reality. And he says, well, I've heard that you can put people into a state of hypnosis. And I said, yeah, I do that. He says, well, can you demonstrate that? And he was very polite. He wasn't testing me or anything. So I said, sure. So I stopped two individuals in the mall and I quickly, instantaneously put them into hypnotic state. And the reason why I picked those two individuals is because they seemed like they were in a hurry. And I wanted him to see how I could really just stop them while they were desperately trying to get to where they were going and quickly put them into a trance state. And I did. And you could tell that they wanted to keep going, but I did a technique called the deepener, where I placed them, when I stopped them, I had them in a light hypnosis state. And then I did a deepener where I put them in a deep state so they wouldn't want to leave. And so they stepped forth and stepped back, and then they were listening and they were hanging on every word I had to say. And the experience, they were pretty much aware that something was happening, but they didn't know what was happening. So they looked at me and they said, who are you? Where are you from? And then I just started talking a little bit more. And then I took it a step further. But anyway, so my friend Vince, he was witness to this and he was like just amazed. And I actually forgot how doing those things is actually energy boost to me. I really like doing those things and interacting with people. So he got to see firsthand how powerful this can be in terms of like really building rapport with individuals and people, okay? And using the power for a good thing. Now, if I wanted to, I could use it to heal them. If, for example, the girl there, if she was, in pain or suffering from something, I could do a healing technique to help her. And that's how powerful this thing is. And the reason why I am bringing this up, not to boast about my skills, but I'm really good at it, is to talk about how I did it. Because I want you to understand something. One of the things I learned from my mentor who taught me this, I remember the first time I met him, he refused to talk to me. I don't know why. I guess I wasn't worthy for him to talk to me, but we quickly became really close. And I remember him telling me that the first rule is that state is transferable, meaning if you want somebody to be in a certain state of mind, you first have to put yourself in that state of mind, and then the energy will transfer over to them. Okay. So that's the necessary prerequisite. But anyway, one of the things that he would tell me, and I studied with him for about 2 years. And after about 2 years, I was really wanted to continue my studies. And he was a really good guy. And I said, listen, I'd like to go an additional 6 months with you, and I'll pay you. He goes, well, listen, Kasanga, I'll be honest with you. He says, I've really taught you all you really need to know. There's no need to go another 6 months. And I really appreciate that, because he could have just took my money and said, yeah, and kept me studying for years on end, which some gurus out there will do to you. But the one thing that he told me that I never forget, he says, I want you to understand something, Kasank. You and I are cut from the same cloth. And he's Canadian. He's a very pale white Canadian guy. It was just funny. And he says, you and I are cut from the same cloth. And I was like, no, I think you and I have very different experiences and backgrounds. You know, you're come from a Canadian white background. I come from a biracial American background. He says, that's not what I'm saying. He says, you and I are cut from the same cloth, meaning that there's nothing that I can do that you can't do. And I really appreciated him saying that, because though his talents were amazing, it really brought it back down to earth. Because then I realized, well, yeah, I can be just as good as him, and I can exceed what he has done. You know what I mean? And I want you to know that as my magi, that we are all cut from the same cloth. These things that I do, where I can stop people on the street and put them in a state of hypnosis or hypnotic trance, where I can heal people, these are things that you can do as well. And if you really apply yourself, you can exceed me. You know, these skills came naturally to me, but I also had to train to perfect them. And what I do, you can do too. So don't ever think that I'm above you or different from you. No, we're all cut from the same cloth. What I can do, you can do. And that's what I told my friend Vince as we were walking. And actually, he was on his way because he was leaving to go to Thailand. And I was like, wow, it's cool, because they have some really great temples out there, And we were talking. I said, make sure you visit this temple and this temple and all that. And as he was in awestruck by what I did, I said, Vince, you could do this. I could show you how to do this within a week, and if you practice it, you can perfect this within 6 months, you know. So I want you Magi's to understand that you are not supposed to be living this way. Understand that. You have natural magical abilities that you have yet to explore and have yet to use. You could perform wonders, you could perform miracles, but you've been raised in a society that indoctrinates you into a mindset that these things aren't possible. The society lies to you, it manipulates you. So I want you to understand that this is a natural ability. I'm not doing something that it's calling upon very evil satanic forces. No, it's natural part of your being. It's just as natural as your lungs or your heart. You understand? Or your kidneys. It's an aspect to your being. In the same way as the ucha, your third eye, your pineal gland. You don't use your third eye, so therefore it lays dormant within you. But if you were to tap into it, you would intuit wisdom and knowledge and communicate with those who have passed on to the other side, because that's one of the properties of the third eye, is that you can communicate with the deceased. But again, society has so much stigma attached to this, and they do so for a reason, to keep you from exploring these depths, to really understanding how powerful you are. You know, I remember just this summer I bought a new car. I had bought this sports car, really fast sports car, right? And as soon as I bought the car, I was in love with it. I'm like, oh, this is an awesome car. It's all shiny. I'm just like driving it. I don't want to hit anything or scratch it and all that. And something happened, and I had to get something fixed on the car. So a friend of mine recommended his friend who's a mechanic, and I gave him the car for about 2 days. And he brought the car back. He fixed it, and he drove the car while I was in the car, right? Because he was going to drive me back to my place. And I could tell the way he acted that he loved driving my car. But one thing that I remember him saying, he looked at me and he says, "You haven't really been driving fast with this car." I said, "No, I haven't." He says, "This car is extremely fast. It's a 350Z." He says, "You should put this car to the test. It's really fast." So the week after, we had finished shooting early, and I got into my car, and it was going to be a long ride home on the freeway. So I said, "Well, let me do this." And I put that car in the gear, and it shot off so damn fast. And I was like, whoa, he is right. It is fast. And I felt like this freedom of being, I was passing every car, and I was like zipping on the freeway. I was like, man, I didn't know this car was this fast. I love the speed, right? So that's you, my Magi's. You have not put yourself to the test. You can do so much more than what you have been doing, and you could be doing so much better. But like that car, you're not going as fast as you can. You haven't tested yourself. Okay? So I want you to think about that. Think about the powers that you have not explored and have not used. Because when you start to use it, and everybody that I coach personally, when I teach them how to manipulate reality, they don't want to go back to the old way. They want more. They get hungry for more. Show me more. Show me more. And sometimes my person loses my cool, because once I show them, they have thousands of questions. What about this? Can I do this? How about this? How about this? I'm like, all right, stop, stop, stop. All right. It's like a whole new world is opened up to you that you didn't know existed when you start to use your power and start to understand how it works. For some people, it's a little scary. There was one woman I coached. She came from a very Christian background. And when I showed her how to manipulate reality, and when she saw something materialize before her eyes, she got scared and dropped back into her old Christian ways. Some people are very firmly embedded in that, and you can't change them. You know what I mean? But I want you to know that you haven't even explored 1% of what you can do, because the society is hell bent on keeping you oppressed. And they use peer pressure. They use your friends and family members to keep you in check. This is why I had to, I'm going to relate something personally to you guys. This is why I had to divorce myself from my family, because my family was brought up in a Southern Christian Baptist background, which would not embrace what I'm doing here. And part of that also was that my family was brought up in that the way you discipline a child is that you have to beat them to near death, And I do not believe in physical abuse of any kind or that type of discipline. And also, they eat meat, and I don't believe in killing animals for eating meat. So we have a lot of differences. But Osiris tells us that we can unite with anybody, even our enemies. So I keep a friendly distance. In the great I-ching oracle, there's a 33rd hexagram which says retreat, but do not miss what it says right after that. It says a friendly retreat, meaning when you're dealing with people who are sahu, who operate out of the animal spirit, you must have a friendly retreat. Okay? You don't want to just cut them off cold. But now, let us talk about the reality that we see before us. Now, I've just came out with this exciting program called How to Get $1 Million. And I hope all of you have gone to the website and take a look at it, because it's pre-orders that will end on December 15th. And after December 15th, the price goes up for the program. And it's an extraordinary program because it teaches you how to manipulate your reality or the interface to bring you financial abundance. And as I said before, it's an awesome program. Check it out. There's no reason why any of you magi shouldn't be signing up for that program, because it's going to pay off. Whatever you do to purchase it, in terms of like if you have to save up to purchase the program, when you purchase the program and you start to apply the techniques, you're going to get that much money back plus more, because you're going to see the techniques work. And if you don't believe me, and if you're a Patreon supporter, go to Patreon. There's a video I made there about how to materialize $50. And I show in that video how you can make $50 or $20 appear before you. I basically lay out the techniques. I don't play games. This is real. Okay. Now, how is this possible? How can you get $1 million? How can you make $50 materialize? Well, you first have to understand one thing, that the perception, the way we are perceiving things in our reality, is what we call is the UI, the user interface. You see, we see the world through a user interface. Now, if you are somebody who has a background in programming or web development, you know what UI is. It falls under the category of user experience, how users navigate a website. When you look at a website and you see navigation, that's the user interface. You see the icon, the trash can, you see the shopping cart icon, that's the user interface. And the way we look at reality and the way we're seeing reality, that light, that TV, are all user interfaces. Now, a gentleman by the name of Donald Huffman just came out with a book called The Interface Theory of Perception. Really very interesting. And he talks about this. And I'd like for us to just listen to a little bit of what he has to say, because I think it's very germane to the topic. So it's called A Case for Reality. So let's kind of like listen to this a bit and see what we can gather from it.
Means a lot to me. That's right. And I'm not a figment of your imagination. And that puts certain responsibilities on me. Even though what I perceive is just an icon of Zubin, I need to be very, very careful how I treat that icon, because in interacting with that icon, I could literally cause pain to the consciousness of Zubin, and you could cause pain to me. So our interface gives us a genuine portal to other consciousnesses, all human consciousnesses. My cats are my icons, but I believe that my cat icons are portals to real conscious creatures that, again, I don't want to hurt. And a mouse, ants, and so forth. It goes all. The interface, I claim, is all to other consciousnesses, but the interface is like a visualization tool. And of course, a visualization tool is there to sort of hide the complexity and dumb things down and so forth, because we'd be overwhelmed by all the consciousnesses out there. And so that's what space-time is. It's a visualization tool.
Okay, so there's a lot there, but one thing I want to ask, because I know this comes up a lot. Well, why, Don, and again, for people who really want to go deep on this, read the book. Why, Don, is it that, why can't you just say, yeah, okay, we're not seeing the truth. Maybe we're just seeing part of the truth. Maybe we're seeing a dumbed down version of what's actually there. Maybe there is a Don in space and time, but we're only seeing enough of it that we need to see to survive. We don't see infrared. We don't see microwaves. We don't see X-rays. I can't see at the, microscopic, quark level, but the stuff exists. We're just seeing some of it. And wouldn't that help us survive?
And that's what most of my colleagues would say. They would say, of course, evolution didn't shape us to see all of the truth. It only shaped us to see those parts of objective reality that we need to stay alive. And so that's the standard view. And what I'm saying is that if you look at the mathematics of evolution very, very carefully, it's called evolutionary game theory. We don't have to wave our hands about this. So to my scientific colleagues who are thinking intuitively about evolution, of course they know evolutionary game theory is a precise mathematical model. And when you look at that mathematics, it says very, very clearly that it's not the case that we're seeing just those parts of the truth that we need. We're seeing none of the truth, almost surely. We're seeing entirely a user interface. And the whole point of a user interface, like for example, again, Grand Theft Auto, right? The whole point, there's nothing in what you see in Grand Theft Auto that in any way resembles the circuits and software and voltages that in that metaphor is the reality. There's just no resemblance whatsoever. And that's not a problem. That's in fact an advantage. It allows.
So I want you to understand what he's getting at very clearly, and it's very interesting. So he's saying that you are not able to see what's behind the matrix. In other words, what you can see is the interface, but you can't see what creates the interface, which is the truth of existence, right? And that's true what he's saying, because all you can really perceive, and that's what you were made by, call it evolution, is to perceive the interface and not the mechanics of what is behind the interface. Now, I talked before in the previous broadcast that there are beings out there who can perceive behind the interface, the inner workings of the interface, that they can step outside of space-time to perceive all things at once. They can perceive how the interface is put together, what's behind the interface, and all that. But I'll talk a little bit about more about that later. So let's go back to this.
Allows you to control the reality, even though you're completely ignorant about its true nature. And that's what evolution has done for us. I'm saying we're not seeing just little bits of the truth that we need. We're seeing none of the truth. And that's what allows us to control the truth effectively, because we don't know anything about the truth. It would be too complicated. And it's just not what we need simple eye candy that lets us do what we need to do.
So the truth is very complicated in order to survive and utilize what actually exists in reality, because you're saying stuff exists.
Sure.
Stuff meaning, let's put that in quotes, there is a world.
Right.
It's not a figment of our imagination. It is a construction. In other words, it's like a desktop on a computer. That's a good analogy you use. Yeah. You see a trash icon. You can do things to that trash icon. You can throw away stuff that you want to throw away. You can accidentally delete something and effectively die,
right?
Because the stuff is gone. So you don't take the trash icon literally. You don't say, oh, there's actually a trash icon there, but you take it seriously.
Absolutely.
But behind that trash icon are zeros and ones and voltage gates and quantum engineering, you know, at this microscopic level that you don't see. And if you saw, you wouldn't be able to compose an email.
Absolutely. And we pay good money for these interfaces to hide the truth. There are all these engineers at these high-tech companies that are spending untold hours, thousands upon thousands of hours to simplify and give us this user interface so that we don't have to deal with all the diodes and resistors and voltages.
That's right. And then there's organizations like Epic Systems that makes a big electronic health record that spend hours and hours and hours making it more complicated, more difficult to use. So that being said, okay, so let's say we're not seeing the truth at all. We're seeing a fitness function. We're seeing a user interface that we generate in a species-specific way. So in other words, a cat that we see as an icon of this furry thing, we cannot really get into its conscious experience because the icon we see is kind of just enough of the cat for us to survive. We know we can't really eat it usually.
Right.
We can pet it. It's going to be, it has claws that could hurt us, but it's also very affectionate, which is a fitness payoff for stress reduction.
Right.
So we see all those things, but we can't dig into its mind to go, oh, what's its experience of the taste of cat food or of being brushed or whatever. But we can kind of guess because we can see when it's unhappy or upset or angry. But when you get to the level of this bottle of water,
yes.
Now you're telling me right now that this is an icon. I see it as wet. If I drink it, I'm probably going to do okay. If I'm thirsty, etc. But this is where I think now. So you've talked about what the world isn't. The world isn't exactly what we see.
Right.
That's a fitness payoff set of icons. Okay, so interface theory of perception is what you talk about in the book, the theory that you have that, no, we're not seeing things as they are, and that dates back to your experience early on with the math of that. But then there's a parallel thing that you talk about in the book, which is, and they're related, they come together, but it's this. How is it that we are aware of anything? How is it that a mass of goo in our brain, these neurons, gives us the taste of chocolate or the smell of an orange or the feeling of love. And no one has ever been able to explain that in any meaningful way. And so how does that relate to this whole thing? Because one thing that people would say, Don, is like, well, we're just living in the matrix, then it's someone's simulation. It makes perfect sense. Of course, we're seeing icons as a simulation, but the base reality is there somewhere.
Right. And so that's called the hard problem of consciousness. And it's widely acknowledged as one of the big open problems in science today. We have all these correlations between brain activity and conscious experiences. Like if I take a magnet and use it to inhibit area V4 in the right hemisphere of your brain, visual area V4, you will lose all conscious experience of color in your left visual field.
So color just drains.
It just drains away. Everything, you see the objects, but it's like a black and white television image. And then I turn off the magnet and the color comes back. And we have dozens of these so-called neural correlates of consciousness. So we know that brain activity and conscious experiences are correlated, but scientists, my colleagues and my good friends, have been trying for decades very, very hard to come up with a scientific theory about how brain activity could cause conscious experiences. That's the standard view, and they've not been able to do it.
And this is not for lack of trying. So
right.
You have information integration theory, you have Tononi, you have even folks like Dan Dennett and others saying that consciousness is a kind of elaborate illusion. Others saying that it has to do with the quantum collapse in neural microtubules. And it seems like in most of these sort of physicalist interpretations, they're assuming something, and this is how it relates to your original line of reasoning.
Right.
They're assuming that there's a physical world of matter that exists, that atoms build up, molecules build up, cells build up neurons. And these neurons are causal. They actually cause something to happen in a physical world that somehow emerges the taste of chocolate, the feeling of love, the subjective experience.
Okay, so let's talk about that subjective experience, because they're throwing a lot of things here, and I want to kind of clarify some of the things they're talking about. For one thing, they subscribe to the notion that we're in a simulation. I made a video about this about 2 years ago, and I said that we do not exist in a simulation, but this is a popular theory that's been going around with those who subscribe to quantum theory. The other thing to talk about is because they believe that we are in a simulation, that there is a base reality, that there needs to be a real reality, or the engineers or the architects who created us in our simulation. But I don't subscribe to that theory. Now, what he's talking about here is that there is no real solid reality, that there's nothing that is really solid, that you have these atoms that come together to give you the illusion of reality, or something is solid. All right, so let's just go back and follow him just a little bit more.
And that if you give me that, right, then I can spin you up a world, and somewhere we'll figure out at some point how that leads to consciousness. We're just not smart enough. Maybe we'll never be smart enough to figure it out. Maybe these theories are on the right track, etc. But the truth is we're not even close.
Right.
Starting with physical matter, in other words, assuming what you've already said is not a valid assumption, which is that the world exists as we see it. In other words, matter is real, atoms are real, electrons are real. As such, neurons are real. So the failure of a lot of scientists who have been working on this, including people like Crick and others who you've worked with, who are colleagues of yours, it's been a struggle. And so this is the hard problem of consciousness. Let's just work on it more using a physicalist basis, which is atoms exist, neurons exist. But you're saying, what if we're just wrong and we've made a rookie mistake?
Right.
And what's that about?
That's right. So we've assumed that neurons exist even if they're not perceived, and that neural activity causes our conscious experiences, or neural activity in an embodied brain, right? So it's your brain and your body interacting with an environment. And most of my colleagues, I'd say 95 to 99% of my colleagues working on this hard problem of consciousness are assuming, of course, that's the form of the solution. Neural activity somehow will cause our conscious experiences. But as you pointed out, we've been utterly unable to come up with a scientific explanation for even one conscious experience. So and these are all my friends. I mean, Stuart Hameroff, who does the neuronal microtubules idea, we're buddies. But when we get on stage at a conference, I'll ask him, so, Stuart, we're interested in doing science here. Can you use your collapse of neuronal microtubules quantum states to explain any particular conscious experience, the taste of vanilla, the smell of a rose, a headache? And anyone, is there any conscious experience that you can explain this way? And he'll say no. And I say, well, next year I'll ask you the same question. And that's the problem. Also with integrated information theory, I've asked Giulio Tononi, a couple times, can you use your theory to give a integrated information circuit, a causal circuit that is or causes the taste of chocolate or anything, and he can't do it. And so until we can actually have a scientific theory that actually makes specific predictions, this is the circuit or this is the microtubule collapse that has to be the taste of chocolate. It could not be the smell of garlic, and these are the principled reasons why. Until then, there's not enough science on the table to actually even falsify these things. What they're really proposing are there are these interesting correlates, and it's true that there are very interesting EEG correlates, complexity correlates of consciousness, and there may be neuronal.
Okay, so enough of that. He's going off. So basically what they're looking for, if you are a programmer, right? They're basically looking for the code that tells you that this is chocolate. This is how chocolate tastes. This is how chocolate smells. But what they are failing to understand that consciousness does not exist because there are neurons or connections, synaptic connections within the brain. That is not where consciousness resides, in the mind or the brain or whatever. And they can't explain consciousness because it's immaterial. And we know, and if you follow me, I've always said that the problem with science is it's based on the concrete, the left brain, and that Western man has a problem with abstract analysis, abstract thinking. Hence is why he has to create an image of God, because to say that God is Amen, that which cannot be perceived, that which cannot be seen or felt, is a problem for Western man, very, very much a problem. In the same sense as I want you to understand that when we see NASA sending probes to different star systems looking for life, they are looking for concrete life. They're looking for a physical representation based on carbon. They're looking for that type of life, which they don't understand that life can exist in many different forms, just as water can change into steam. You know what I mean? Just as oxygen exists, but you cannot see it. So their idea of life has to be something concrete. Now, going back to the example of what I had talked about before in the mall, when I was able to put those individuals into a hypnotic state, what I was doing was merely manipulating the interface. All right. We all have an interface. And in neurolinguistic programming, NLP, this is called the frame or the metaframe. And the metaframe is a way or perspective on how you see something, because you're filtering out information and you're letting some information in. And that filtering out of information creates a perspective, a frame for which you see the world. That frame is none other than the user interface. So when I am talking to someone and I want to put them into a trance state, or when I want to materialize money, a $50 bill or a $20 bill, what am I doing? I'm merely manipulating the interface, the user interface. So for example, if you're sitting at your computer and you're using Word, or if you're using Excel, there are certain icons that are standard, right? But what if I go in there and I reprogram those icons so you don't see them on your screen? Then you're like lost. What happened here? Those disappeared. This is not Excel. Yes, it is Excel. I just took out a couple of the icons. You understand? So you as an individual have a user interface, and we've all collectively are using the same user interface. But see, no one has told us that you can change the interface. because society and a ruling elite does not want us to know that the way that we can materialize money, we can change our reality, is through rewriting the code to change the interface. As the host, the interviewer was speaking to Donald, and he was talking about the icon, the trash can, or the cat. You can rewrite the code so that the trash can disappears and the cat becomes a dog because it's an interface. Now, let me take this a step further. We all share in the interface. We're all using the same interface, and that's not how it should be. But the way we're using the interface, because it comes from the mass collective agreement, the ruling elite has said this is what it is. This is a dog. This is a cat. This is a fish. You can't change. This is the sky. And we all agreed to, we all bought into that, right? Now, when we go deeper and we start to look what's behind the interface. Now, there's different levels of things that exist beyond the interface. But what I want you to understand that, let me write it out because I want to kind of really depict this so you guys really understand. So we have the user interface, right? And then you have all these things that are in between there. But what I'm really more interested in is this part. Let me see if you guys can see this. All right. This is the user interface that we're all using. In between there is a bunch of unknown stuff. I'm not going to get into that today. But when you get to the bottom is what we call is the singularity. Okay. And the singularities, that's what we are interested in. And some call this singularity, you may have heard this term, 5D. The singularity is when there is a collapse and all things become one. The singularity is source energy. The singularity is God. That's when we, the individual souls, become one, and that is source, God, Yahweh. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Now, let's go back to the user interface. As I said before, when I was putting the people into hypnotic trance, all I was doing was rewriting the code, manipulating the user interface. Well, Kasank, how do you do that? Very simple. Very simple. How do you rewrite the code? I gave you guys the answer. Does anybody know? You probably won't get this because I kind of said it really quick at the very beginning of this broadcast. How do you rewrite the code? How do you change the interface? Come on, Magi's, put it in the chat box. Tell me, how do you rewrite the code? How do you change the interface? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a prize. If anybody gets it right, I will give you the How to Get $1 Million program for free for the first person that gets it right. Come on, somebody, take a chance. The first person gets it right gets the program How to Get $1 Million for free. No one? No one? I'm going to give you the answer in a couple minutes. Okay. Oh, that's a tongue twister there. That's a tongue twister you got there. Okay, we have you change yourself. Okay, switch symbols. That's actually close. That's actually close, but not on it right away, but that's close. Uh, you weren't here. Why were you late? Don't be late next time, all right? You Magi's are good. You guys are close. You guys are very close. Connect to source. No, that's not right. Reset your programming. You can't reset your programming. Nope, that's not close. Tell us, please. All right. I just want to see who's the closest here. Who's the closest here? You were the closest. You change your belief system. You change your belief system. You change the thoughts, the mind. Specifically, I talked about state is transferable. You want somebody to be in a particular state, you first have to get into that state. So, in order for you to change the interface, you have to change your belief system. Yes, change your mind, your thoughts, because we are all subject to mind programming. Mind programming is those dominant thoughts that the ruling elite tells us and legitimizes. You understand? And right now, the dominant thought process is left brain thinking. Only that which is concrete exists, which is why we don't even take into account or look into right brain thinking. What is right brain thinking? Well, the acceptance of things like meditation, trance, um, those things in this society are put down. We think we should learn by auditory skills where the teacher just lectures us and that's learning. That's not how you learn. Learning is a right brain trait. So if I want to manipulate the matrix, if I want to change the interface, I first have to change my belief system. Do you understand? And by changing your belief system, you then change reality, because this reality hinges upon the current belief system that you hold. And what's the current belief system that you hold? It's given to you by the dominant culture, the dominant society. So you have to radically change your perspective and what you believe for the user interface to change. And it can be done. It can be done. You follow me? But the programming is hard because even when I meditate and focus on all my intention to materialize a light bulb, it doesn't work. Okay, good point. Very good point, King. All right. The reason why it's hard is because you need to do hypnosis. Meditation alone won't do it. See, when you're guided into hypnotic trance by hypnotherapists, then you go deep, deep, deep into the subconscious mind where your thoughts are rooted. And then when he gives you post-hypnotic suggestions, it changes the belief system. And then when you come out of that hypnotic state, then your perspective is different and everything changes. Yes, meditation can do it, but you'll have to be doing meditation for a longer period of time. You can't just do 1 or 2 sessions. It may take you 28 days, a lunar cycle, or it may take you 2 months, 3 months before you can go deep enough into meditation. Meditation works uh, through a culmination of effects. It's cumulative. So you don't expect it to work right away, but over the course of time, if you meditate consistently, which is why you should always meditate at a certain time of day and don't change that. If you meditate consistently, eventually your old belief system will change if you're feeding it a new belief system. And when the old belief system changes, then you see a new reality. Now, when they were doing experiments, the CIA and the Nazi Party were doing experiments, they figured out a way how to streamline the process, how to quickly speed it up. And what they would do was they would have the prisoners in the Nazi camps be deprived of sleep. The CIA, when they wanted you to accept a new belief system, they would deprive you of sleep. And all the while you were deprived of sleep, they would have a speaker, and the speaker would be feeding you a new belief system. And that would be going directly into your subconscious mind. And then you would be reprogrammed. This is how they did the Manchurian candidates. You understand? So it went really deep into your core. Now, I want you to understand something. The reality that you see before you, let's go back to the plane, the train, the garbage can, the cat, the dog, the goldfish. Those are not real things. They are symbols that stand there in place of reality. They are symbols. They are belief systems. The cat is a belief system. The dog is a belief system. It's a symbol. It's an analogy, but it's not really a cat. It's not really a dog. It's just standing there as a symbol. Like you see the icon of the trash can on your computer, it's not a real trash can. It's just an icon. The cat is not a real cat. It's a symbol of a belief that you're harboring in your subconscious mind. Does that make sense? Everything that you see before you in this reality is just a symbol. Water that you drink is a symbol. It's a symbol of that which is pliable, okay? It is not water itself. Therefore, it is subject to change when your belief system changes. Does that make sense? When you understand this, then you are like the HTML5 coder. Then you know now how to rewrite the code. You know how to manifest money. You know how to change your circumstances because you say, okay, in order to change my circumstances, I need to change the user interface. How do I change the user interface? Is by changing my belief system, what I subscribe to. This is the technique that we practice called going dark, that you do not think about certain things that you do not want to manifest in your reality. You have friends who become your enemy and you don't like them anymore. Don't think about them anymore. And you'll notice that when they're not in your sphere of awareness, they will disappear from your life. You understand? If you don't, here's a secret. If you want to have a life of abundance and you always want to have money, rid yourself of the thought of poverty, rid yourself of the thought of scarcity. Get rid of that thought. I know it's hard, but do your meditations so that the idea of scarcity or poverty never enters your mind. When that happens, then you will have a life of abundance. That's how it works. And in the program that I have, How to Get $1 Million, it specifically focuses on rewiring the user interface so that your perspective changes, your meta frame changes, your belief system changes. This is when I coach people, when I was coaching dating, and I would say, you want the right person to come into your life, then you must adopt the belief system that first and foremost, you are worthy. That there, because many times we believe that we may see somebody who's very attractive and we say, well, I can never get with that person. That person's out of my league. Well, then you're actually programming the user interface to not bring you that person. You understand what I mean? When you say to yourself, I can never have $1 million, you're programming the user interface to keep that money away from you. When you read the biblical stories of those individuals who had a passion, like Muhammad, who wanted to preach the word from the Quran, he was fanatical, but he had such a deep belief to the core of his being that he was able to proselytize and convert so many people to Islam. When you have such a strong belief that goes to the core of your being, not only do you change the interface, but you perform magic. That's the basis of magic, a strong belief system. Do you understand what I'm saying? The Bible talks about the belief moving mountains. Understand, my beloved, you are using an interface that you did not create. You're using an interface that has been put together by those who don't have your best interest at heart. You are using an interface by those who have created it and taught you that it doesn't even exist. So for a long time, you weren't aware of that fact. So I have brought this light to you now. And I've also told you how you can now change your life for the better. And I spoke to you early in this broadcast and I said we're all cut from the same cloth. The things that I do, you can do too. There's no difference. There's no man above you, no Jesus, no Muhammad, no Buddha, no Krishna. Those people are not above you. They only knew how to manipulate the user interface better than you. And in time, if you practice, you will be just as good as using the interface as them. So I say to you, my family, embark on this journey. Stop using this interface. It is damaged. It has a virus. It was created by the ruling elite, the Illuminati, to keep you from changing it, to keep you from using your power to manipulate reality and to manifest a life you've always wanted. You can be happy, you can be wealthy, and you can be wise. Learn to use your God-given power. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. This is Kasank Ma Keparu, son of Maat and Tahuti. My aunt is a beautiful goddess, Heteru. Until my next broadcast, Amun Ra. And check out my program, please.